Alrighty, this is my file system service, one of two services, this and then the identity service. I'm going to start off with a couple of things that I did at the very beginning and when we were doing permissions and setting up the initial file system. I approached running it using XUnit and creating unit tests. Because of a lot of the refactoring that I've done, these aren't all that functional at this point. But to highlight that here I've broken out operations from permissions. And the easiest difference, something like deleting. You can recursively delete on a directory, but you can't recursively delete really on files. And so depending upon the type of node that we're looking at, will depend or will dictate what type of operations are available. There are also permissions, and here was just a simple test of looking at permissions. In this case, just testing that you could actually only read, or that you could read it when you're requesting to read it. So I'll raise that back towards the end. I'm just going to press start. And this is going to launch the REST API for the file system, just the file system at this point. We've seen that, and it's going to have a Swagger interface. At this point, it's done all of its adding of the applications, configuring of the services, two in particular that we've added. One is for our file system provider, and then the other is a hosted service created to seed the file system, to create bogus data, to give us stuff to work with. So each and every time this starts up, it creates bogus data for us. So when I hit F5, it's going to pop us in to this hosted service. This hosted service has to do a couple of things, but most importantly, it's going to get us our service provider or our service of a type virtual file system that the service provider is aware of. And so it'll do this dynamically based off of whatever's been registered for this abstraction. The file system has a relationship to the file system context. So if we hover over file system, we can see that it is really the root, and then it points to where it needs to persist its information to the DB resolver, which in this case right here is our file system context. Start method here of the hosted service is going to call two directories, or two methods, one for the directories, one for the files. I'm going to hit go, and you can see those are right there. We're still in the same class. Seeding directories. Here we're going to say, please create 5 directories for us. I'm going to just hit continue. And so at this point, we have 5 directories waiting to be inserted. If we look at it, we can see that this has a directory name with R ending in Z, and that there is a parent of this directory, and the name of that parent is root. It is currently waiting to insert these directory nodes. So this is that distinction of operations and permissions. This is a type directory node into our command repository, again on our file system context that we created. And we can see that at this point it is aware of one repository, which is what we'd expect, and that's going to be of type directory node. And that it has 5 records. So get through that. We're going to do 30 files. Same scenario here, F5. So in each of these, we've created that bogus data. We've told it how. We're also validating that name so that there aren't any funky characters like a slash, and using a factory method to create that name, which is then going to, in this case, create all of that bogus data for us. And we can see when we hover over this that the file node that these are of type file node. If I, in this case, look at the first set, we can see that it is of type file name with bogus data. That has a parent with a directory name of 2A, and it has a parent with a directory name of root. And so we're going to insert that data, which brings us to our Swagger. I'm going to go through this one quickly, but let's just go get the root ID. So that's popped us back in. We're at this method specifically, get root node, knows what to do. We're just going to press go. It's going to take us back to Swagger. We can see that it's responded with a root node. Every object has a GUID that will be specific to its type, which again allows certain operations and permissions to be applied to it. We're going to go back up. Here we can see two more methods, get directories and get files. We'll step through this one a little more carefully. Execute, back in the code over here. We can see that we have a query repository. Last time we went to the command repository. Again, generic, we're looking for type directory nodes, and we're going to get all sync, or get all. This method here, we'll see it used again. We're going to use a specification pattern. In this case, for the directory node of parent will be root, and we're expecting directory nodes back. Hit F5. Here's that get all async being used generically, receiving a generic version of the specification. So a directory node and file nodes would have two different specifications. Hit F5, and we are getting the directory methods. We're about to return our results. We can see our 5 results that we inserted, directory name 2A, and that it has a directory name of root. So hit F5, go back to Swagger, and it returned 5 directories with those bogus names. The next method that we have on the controller, try it out, execute, hop over into the code. Here we can see that we're into that get file async method of the controller. We're going to hit F5. That's going to stop us here at that get all method that we looked at, which is receiving that generic specification based off of the type of node that this is. And then we are going to get the results. If we look at those results, we see a lot, 30. We're going to open up that first one. We see it as a name M ending in P. But if we look at it, it has a parent with the name 2 ending in A, like we saw previous, which it has a parent with the directory name of root. I think that's it. Again, the part that we aren't able to see is as I refactored this REST API into a REST API, is where I initially was creating stuff unit tests to do kind of the executions and testing for me. Thank you.